Good morning. You're watching All You Need to Know on Bloomberg Quint. I'm Darshan Mehta. Let's see what happened as far as the global markets are concerned. Not the best of cues coming in. US markets were rather flat in trade with a slight negative bias. Europe as a whole was mainly on the negative side. And Asia doesn't have a too good start at this point of time. The Nikkei is down almost 0.2%. The Hong Kong markets are trading flat in trade. No doubt Shanghai has opened with a slight positive bias. The SGX Nifty is indicating that we might have a flattish opening in trade today. Now, as far as how did the ADRs pan out in trade, ICICI Bank and Tata Motors did manage to move up significantly in trade, and gains coming in from HDFC Bank and Infosys. What didn't do well were counters like Vedanta and Dr. Reddy's. How did the markets pan out in trade? The Nifty was up almost 0.5%, outperforming the mid-cap and small-cap end of the market. The Nifty Bank, the Nifty PSU Bank also managed to did well in trade yesterday. Which were the sectors that did well? Oil as a sector did well, mainly on account of Reliance trading at new record highs. So that is something that boosted. What didn't do well was the Nifty Pharma Index led by Lupin, which was down almost 5% post a weak set of numbers that came out. What has happened this week? Metals are up almost 2%, media is up 2%, and energy is up almost 1.8% this week. What hasn't done well is Nifty Pharma, which is down 2%. Real estate and FMCG not also having the best time this week so far. As far as flows are concerned, both FIs, DIs have been net buyers, but on a month-to-date basis, FIs have been heavy sellers. They've sold in 886 crores in the cash market itself. As far as the Nifty contribution is concerned, Reliance and ICICI Bank were the main reason. Reliance contributing half of the Nifty gains. Maruti, Infosys, Lupin trading weak on the Nifty. As far as the F&O market is concerned, fresh longs were seen on the Nifty. Open interest build up of almost 3%. Short covering was seen on the Nifty Bank. Open interest was down for the Nifty Bank by close to almost 2%. Where are positions being taken? As of now, 11,500 seems to be the resistance that the market is looking at, and support is coming in at the 11,300. So this is the broad range that the market is looking at. The bears don't want 11,500 to be broken at this point of time. What happened in trade yesterday? Despite put writers writing it levels of 11,300 right up to 11,500, the Nifty managed to move up. Still there is enough open interest build up on the 11,500 mark in trade. As far as the stocks in the F&O band is concerned, all four remain. The Adani Twins, there is Jet Airways, and there is PNB. The Nifty PCR managed to move up. The Nifty Bank PCR also managed to move up in trade since the market were trading with a positive bias. Three stocks I want to point out. Voltas, first of all, open interest build up of 15% on the long side. Then there is DV's Lab with open interest build up of 12% on the short side, and Lupin fell in significantly post the numbers, was down 5% on high open interest build up of almost 11%. But these are all the domestic cues. Let's go across to Bloomberg's Rosalind Chin for all the top international headlines.
The Philippines faces a rate decision later Thursday, and the question is not whether to hike for the third time in a row, but by how much. A booming economy, surging inflation, and pressure on the peso indicate a 50 basis point rise to 4%, according to a Bloomberg survey. That would be the biggest in a decade as emerging markets try to curb the fallout from rising US rates and the strong dollar. The pound fell to its lowest in more than 9 months against the euro amid growing concern that the UK could end up leaving the European Union with no deal on future economic ties. Sterling dropped for a third day versus the common currency and weakened against all its G10 peers. ING says its weakness is a clear sign that markets are starting to focus on the risks of a no-deal Brexit. Saudi Arabia is threatening more pressure on Canada for its criticism of the arrest of women's rights activists. Foreign Minister Adel Al-Jubeir says the next retaliatory steps could affect investment flows between the two countries. The FT reports that the Saudi central bank and pension funds have already begun selling Canadian assets. Canadian stocks and bonds were little changed.
Canada will always stand up for our workers and our companies. We need to make sure that we're protecting Canadian interests in any situation. We continue to engage with the government of Saudi Arabia. The Minister of Foreign Affairs had a long conversation with their foreign minister yesterday, and diplomatic talks continue.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok and Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Rosalind Chin. This is Bloomberg.
it's the result of a statutory obligation that the United States government has. So under U.S. law, once the U.S. had basically accused Russia of responsibility in this attack, it had 2 months to basically make the formal designation, and then under which sanctions would then go into effect. So it took a little bit longer than anticipated. As the deadline sort of came and went, there was no response from the administration, but then finally now they have announced that under the 1991 Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act, they are imposing these sanctions. So, I mean, you did see earlier the U.S. expelled 60 or so Russian diplomats as part of the response. So the government has responded fairly forcefully, and this is a follow-on to that.
Do we know what these sanctions, these new sanctions, will entail?
I think, as far as we know, under the law, there are a couple of sort of elements that the sanctions will have. One is a first round that limits exports and financing, but that's not expected to really have much impact. The bigger impact will come later when there's sort of a second tranche of sanctions that would ban some licenses to export sensitive national security goods to Russia, and once that happens, that could really put the pinch on Russia, and you could see, many millions of dollars affected by those sanctions coming later on.
How this was announced yesterday. I mean, we get a tweet and then some replies. The stock doesn't get suspended until an hour afterwards, and then we get this blog post 2 hours after that with no real details of this secured financing that Elon Musk spoke of. I mean, this just isn't how a serious public company behaves. You know, let's just get the obvious thing out the way. Tesla has burned $3.5 billion over the past 12 months. You can't do a leverage buyout of a company like that. Could you possibly persuade big-ticket sovereign wealth funds to come in? Who knows? Quite why they would buy into or put equity into a company that is not only burning cash, but in order to grow has to spend billions more developing new models, factories, is beyond me, to be honest. The second thing I think people should focus on is less than a week ago, Tesla was telling us on their quarterly earnings call that it's imminent that they're about to turn profitable, become cash flow positive. That, to me, would be the ultimate riposte to the short sellers that the company seems obsessed with. Yeah. So why do this?
Well, the commodities market definitely had some interesting moves, starting off with oil prices, which declined more than 3% in trade and posted the biggest loss since July 16. Now, this was on the back of the trade war concerns, which in fact even overshadowed the U.S. inventory data, which came in positive. Now, China is to impose 25% tariff on American gasoline and other fuels with the exemption of crude oil, and the levies will in fact take effect from August 23rd. As far as the inventory data is concerned, we had positive inventory data, which in fact fell more than 1.3 million barrels for last week. But despite that fact, oil prices managed to decline more than 3% in trade. Shifting focus to the base metal space, the index itself posted its second day of gains, but there was an interesting move that came about in the aluminium prices, which surged more than 3% in trade. Now, the buy orders in fact triggered more than 68,000 contracts which were traded in Shanghai, and that in fact triggered the up move in the London Metal Exchange. In fact, we have a comment from Tai Wong, who's the head of capital markets, BMO Capital Markets, who says that traders in Shanghai were not only aggressive buyers in aluminium but also nickel, which in fact managed to surge more than 1% in trade. On the other hand, we had the likes of copper, lead and tin, which declined marginally, and the aluminium rally has now continued into the early Asian hours, which is up about 2.5%, and Shanghai Steel is currently trading with a cut of about 1%. Lastly, as far as gold prices are concerned, we're seeing some bit of uptick come about for gold prices, as they have in fact managed to stay in the positive territory for the last 3 days. With that, let's shift focus to the currency space. Good morning, Saloni. What cues are you picking up?
So, Jayesh, talking about Indian rupee first, it ended with marginal gains yesterday for the second consecutive session at 68.63 levels against the dollar. Now, a record-setting rally in the local equity markets and weaker dollar overseas largely supported rupee's up move yesterday. That apart, if you see, most Asian currencies were trading higher versus the dollar yesterday after Chinese central bank supported Chinese yuan by imposing tariffs on US imports. Speaking of the bond markets, sovereign bonds ended little changed yesterday as 10-year benchmark yield ended steady at 7.78%. Now, do remember that yields have risen almost 9 basis points in the last 4 trading sessions. On the global front, dollar index ended lower for the second straight session, and it now trades steady above the crucial 95 mark. That apart, pound on the other hand fell nearly 0.4% yesterday on the back of Brexit uncertainties, while euro trades flat against the greenback now despite a slowdown in their German production data. And lastly, speaking of dollar rupee, now it is trading at 68.47 levels against the dollar in the non-deliverable forward market, which indicates a positive opening for Indian rupee in today's trade.
Amongst the stocks that we're tracking in trade today includes Nalco, which reported a very strong set of numbers, revenue growth of 65%, and the net profit grew 5.3 times to 687 crores. Even if you look at the operational performance, it stood out with the margins expanding from 12% to as much as 34%. We also saw a strong set of numbers from Phoenix Mills, where despite a muted revenue growth, the net profit growth came in at 40%. Even if you look at the margin performance, it has bumped up by nearly 300 basis points. Next on the list is Blue Star. Now, despite a muted performance on the top line front, the net profit managed to rise by 20%, beating estimates, and this was despite an exceptional gain during the quarter. But that apart, even if you look at the operational performance, the EBITDA grew by 23% despite a muted top line growth, and the margins bumped up to 9.1%. Siemens Limited is the next on our list. A very strong top line performance is what led to us reporting it as good set of numbers, a 16% growth. However, our net profit growth looks higher, but that's only on account of a tax benefit. Otherwise, EBITDA growth of 33% and the margin expansion to 9.8% seems more or less in line with what was estimated. But weak set of numbers coming in from Thermax. Despite 18-19% revenue growth, the operational performance wasn't very good, and the net profit growth that you're seeing is only on account of a lower tax outgo. Operationally, EBITDA actually fell by 4% and margins also came off to 6.7%. So actually, Thermax is a miss. SL Propack is another counter that will be in focus, and that's on the back of a ET report which says that promoters may be looking to sell controlling stake in the company, and that a formal sale process could be launched by the month end. So watch out for that name. And lastly, we have Ceylon Exploration, where Dolly Khanna has upped her stake. She's bought 0.6% stake via a bulk deal yesterday. She already held about 1.5% stake or so as of 30th June. The stock had already run up 15% yesterday on the back of its numbers for the June quarter that it had reported, but probably we could see some more upside given this investor name. But those are the stocks that you need to track in trade today.
BPCL and HPCL, both the oil marketing companies, reported their numbers yesterday post-market, and for both the oil marketing companies, it was mainly the higher inventory gains that played out in the first quarter of financial year 2019. For BPCL, if you see, the company's revenue was higher by close to 10%, while EBITDA increased by 4%. Margins contracted marginally to 5.4%, while the net profit declined 14%. Now, the net profit declined 14% because in the last quarter, the company had a higher other income and a lower tax rate. Now, inventory gains for BPCL rose 6 times to close to 2,679 crore rupees, while the company also reported a foreign exchange loss of close to 705 crore rupees in the first quarter. Now, on the operational side, if you see, the gross refining margin came in at $7.5 per barrel, aided by higher inventory gains, while crude throughput remained below down by around 1.4% to close to 7.74 million metric tons. However, the sales volume were higher by around 2.2% to 10.97 million metric tons in the first quarter. Now, on the financial side, the debt of the company was down by around 16% to close to 19,683 crore rupees, while other income was also lower by 34%. Tax rate for BPCL in the first quarter remained higher at 32% versus 26% reported by the company in the last quarter. Now, for HPCL, if you see the headline numbers, the revenue was higher by 11%, while the EBITDA of the company was higher by 9%. Margins remained largely stable at 4.7%, while the net profit declined marginally to 1,700 crore rupees. Now, inventory gains for HPCL rose nearly 12 times to close to 1,900 crore rupees, while the company also reported a foreign exchange loss of close to 538 crore rupees in the first quarter. On the operational side, if you see, the gross refining margin rose to $7.15 per barrel, aided by higher inventory gains, while crude throughput was down by close to 2.4%. Now, sales volume were higher by around 3% to 9.72 million metric tons, while the capacity utilization for the for HPCL refiners stood at around 115% versus 119% reported by the company in the last quarter. Lastly, on the financial side, the debt of the company was down by around 29%, while in first quarter the tax rate was higher for HPCL at around 34% versus 26% reported by the company in the last quarter.
Sourcing from India by 2020 and is looking to eventually make that into 50%. Now, in the last 2 years, IKEA has increased its supplier base from 48 to 60. Now, this could also be one of the textile products that IKEA sources from India.
It's a fantastic opportunity for us because you see already today in our store, in our range, 1,000 different products made in India, and a lot of them have become new. You see a lot of products which are especially made for India because we learned a lot about the needs of the people, how they are living, but also items and home furnishing products what you only need in India, like idli maker or steam cooker. So we have a lot of products just made for India and made in India. We have a lot of textile opportunities. We opened recently a sofa supplier, so we will be supplied by sofas and also the world. We opened a mattress supplier just a couple of months ago. That's a fantastic example of we saw what kind of raw materials is available in India. And we were using now coconut fiber in that mattresses, which makes it more let's say, air conditioned, you can call it like that, because it's a very it's very good with the coconut fiber and a bit harder.
If you're looking to model or remodel your kitchen, you can probably come to this store in Hyderabad. But if you're based outside of Hyderabad in any other city, you'll have to wait till IKEA open its next store, probably in Mumbai, which is expected to open in the next 1 year, or shop online, because that's what they have planned to start over the next 1 year.
We learned a lot about, not only in India, but we were learning, you know, we were starting with a format of the big stores, everything under one roof, which is fantastic. So you find everything here. It's a fun day out for you. It's a source for inspiration and for home furnishing in the big stores. But then also, not everybody is able today with all the to reach IKEA. In Hyderabad, it's a bit more easy because we are closer to the city. In Mumbai, we're a bit more far out of the city with a big store. So we totally learned in IKEA, and then especially in India, we have to be closer where the people are. So we'd like to be with the people in the city. So we are now looking for different smaller and other formats in the city. So then, because you work in the city, you live in the city, you socialize in the city, that you're able to meet also our range, our people closer to where you are, instead of only traveling 2 hours to come to an IKEA store. In the same time, we are investigating, we are looking to build up online, a digital infrastructure for us, so that you have an inspiring web page, you can order and get inspired, you can order everything. So the online part we are developing, and at the same time also the infrastructure for delivery and the services we'd like to have.
Moving on to some stock-specific action and the stocks that are likely to react to yesterday's delivery buying and selling. The first stock on the list is Lupin. Now, that was down about nearly 5% in trade yesterday and saw delivery selling in excess of 230 crores. The delivery volume managed to double for itself as compared to its 5-day average, while the total volume surged about 1.5 times as compared to its 5-day average. Second stock to watch out for, Ashok Leyland. Now, that was up about 5% in trade and saw delivery buying of nearly 200 crores. The delivery volume surged about 98% as compared to its 5-day average, while the total volume surged just about 50% as compared to its 5-day average. Last and final stock, Maruti. Now, that was down about 2.2% in trade and saw delivery selling of nearly 382 crores. The delivery volume surged about 77%, while the total volume surged about 22% as compared to its 5-day average.
It's definitely a blow for Uber to set a cap rather than to sort of grow and shrink with the amount of demand. So it's a major setback for Uber. I'm sure, plenty of other cities will watch what happens in New York. This is a 1-year sort of lock-in, so we'll be able to see what happens here, and then other cities will certainly, learn and make a decision for themselves, see what impact it has on traffic and wages and everything else.
On Thursday, Samsung announces its new, bigger Note 9 smartphone, just weeks before Apple unveils its largest iPhone to date. Reporting from New York, I'm Mark Gurman, and I cover consumer technology for Bloomberg News. Samsung's new Note 9 phone is one of the most anticipated phone launches of the year, as it is the South Korean technology giant's highest-end device. The Note created the phablet phone category a few years ago and even pushed Apple to go larger for its own phone screens. The phone is famous for having a built-in stylus, and this year's upgrade is expected to have a new Bluetooth stylus that you can use to snap photos from afar, draw, and control music. Like the S9 before it, the Note 9 is expected to have a slightly larger screen, about 6.5 inches, and upgraded cameras. It's expected to start north of $1,000, coming in close to the price of an iPhone X. Speaking of the iPhone X, the Note 9 will go toe-to-toe with the new larger version of the iPhone X and a new larger low-cost iPhone, both of which are expected in September.
Well, several stories on the website currently, BloombergQuint.com. You should check them out here. Just a couple of them. U.S. fund house T. Rowe Price has alleged that 2 Indian sponsors and their nominee directors on the board of UTI Asset Management have taken control of the board and are disrupting board governance. It has approached the Bombay High Court to instruct authorities to fulfill their supervisory responsibilities by directing other UTI shareholders and their nominee directors to comply with regulations. Now, the staff at the Reserve Bank of India will go on strike on the 5th and 6th of September over long-pending pension disputes. According to the United Forum of Reserve Bank Officers and Employees, the decision to go on strike was taken after the regulator and officials from the Ministry of Finance did not approve the forum's demand on revising pension payments for retired officials. That's all you need to know going into trade this Thursday. Do stay tuned. There's a lot more on the other side of this very short break, starting with Indian Open. This is Bloomberg Quint.